Hey everybody, Sam here, also known as Mr. Stainless, and today we are taking a little bit of time out from recording our State of Decay 2 No Base Challenge series to talk about a mission that I think is sorely missing in State of Decay 2 that would go a long way to increasing the ways that we connect with our community and the members in our community in-game. So if you are a fan of the series, if you've played the games before, or if not, I'll just give you a brief rundown basically. In State of Decay 1, the way that you kind of developed a relationship with the characters that were in your community, I feel was very, very different. The way that worked was that we as players, we all had the same foundational characters that our community was built around. You had Marcus, Lily, Alan, people like that, and Ed of course as well, and a number of other characters, and they were the same for everyone. We all had those people in our community, and we could then build upon those characters by recruiting or finding other random survivors out in the wild. And that meant that as we as a community came together, we had common ground to discuss. For instance, you know, we could all come together and all share how much we hate Lily and love Marcus and so on and so forth. There was always a common ground between everyone. There was something that we had in common, and then we could talk about how our individual communities then went beyond that and started to differ as we started to talk about the random community members that we had coming in. The way State of Decay 2 kind of develops the relationship that you have with your community is very different. No person's community really is the same. Everyone has a random kind of set of community members. Even if you do kind of go through the tutorial section as well, I think the stats and the traits there are completely different every time you kind of roll the dice. And what that meant was that, yes, everybody's community was different, but we also didn't have any kind of common ground to come together and discuss. And it was a very jarring experience, I think, for a lot of us whenever we heard that, because it was hard for us to know how we would develop relationships with the characters that we had in our community, because we looked so fondly upon the characters that we had in State of Decay 1. A lot of it could just be nostalgia, but it was hard for us to know because, in essence, what we were having was that this core set of characters that we would be playing with every playthrough. So no matter what happened, you would always have Marcus in your playthrough at the start, unless you killed him. But with State of Decay 2, it was different. Sure, if you complete the game, some of your characters will survive, and you can take them into new playthroughs, and you can continue that relationship. But it's a very different experience. In essence, you're just pulling these random characters out of the ether, and then we have to develop a relationship and develop. I'm making it sound like it's a romance. I think you all know what I mean, but we have to develop a relationship with those characters. And I think recently what I've been doing is kind of thinking about other games that do this, but perhaps do it in a way that isn't so jarring, or in a way that actually you do feel like you start to develop a connection with the people that you have under your command, so to speak. Because I still don't feel, after all this time, I still don't feel like I actually care about the survivors in my community. Every so often there's one or two that I will remember by name. It's mainly because they've cocked up by doing something stupid, by which I mean I've made them do something stupid. But anyway, I think the game that kind of flips that on its head and actually does get you to develop a connection with these randomly generated characters in a much quicker way is Shadow of War or Shadow of Mordor. And this is kind of what I've been thinking of recently, in that how could State of Decay 2 and the State of Decay franchise absorb some more of the things, the mechanics that we see in Shadow of War, to better our ability to develop a connection with those in our community. And recently, if you've been watching my No Base Challenge series, I had one of my characters in my community develop the Blood Plague, and they became infected, and I had to have the choice whether to exile them or euthanize them. And of course I went to euthanize them, put them out of their misery. But whenever I looked at the option to exile it, and I was kind of thinking about it afterwards, there's no real consequence to exiling someone from your community. Sure, there's like a morale dip for like 25 minutes because you've kicked somebody out and somebody might be angry, but that's really it. And I think there's there's an opportunity sorely being missed there, and I think Shadow of War does it perfectly in that, especially in Shadow of War, they kind of expanded upon the mechanics that you have there, that your bodyguards can actually stab you in the back. They can actually appear randomly in the open world and actually save your ass, which has happened to me a number of times, and there's that sticks with you. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's a moment where you're walking through the open world, you're getting absolutely destroyed by NPCs and you're about to die, and all of a sudden one of your bodyguards, one of the people that you recruited into your army, magically appears. They give out a line, a little bit of a speech, and they save your ass, and immediately you're like, you know what, I love this orc right now. I would run over there and I would smooch this guy's face, and it makes you remember them, and that develops a relationship, a connection between you and that character because of these dynamic situations that the game kind of puts you in. And sure, if you've been playing the game for like 1,000 hours, that's probably going to get boring after a while. It's going to lose a little bit of its charm. But I think there's room for State of Decay 2 to absorb some of those mechanics and completely, especially, I know I'm going off a tangent every few seconds here, but especially if we are going to see a State of Decay 3, and especially if the developers are still going to go down the path of there are no recurring characters that every person will have. If it's always going to be random, I think we need to have new mechanics in the game that help us develop connections with our characters in these dynamic ways. And one of the ways that I was simply thinking about was that if you do exile someone from your community, you exile them, you forget about them. Wouldn't it be cool if later down the line, at a random point, let's say you're out, you're clearing out a blood plague heart, you're looting a building, all of a sudden they appear, they've got you cornered, and they just execute your character. I mean, it would just be to seek revenge for you kicking them out. The flip side of that is that you equally could have it that you're out there, you're taking down a blood plague heart, you're really struggling, and all of a sudden they burst in through the door, they burst in through the window with like a machine gun or a machete, and they start hacking away at the blood plague heart as well, because you know what, you kicked them out of your community because you thought they were an asshole, and now they've taken that on board, they've gone out there, they've been saving people, and they want to prove to you that they are worth being in your community again. If something like that happened in State of Decay 2, you would remember that person. Even if you completed that storyline, that save game, and you loaded up the next one, and you were cycling through your characters deciding who to take in, you would see that person's face come up, you would see their name, and you would remember, that's the guy that I doubted, that's the guy that I thought you weren't worth being in my community, and he proved me wrong. Let's bring him in, he's going to be the leader of my new community. And I think State of Decay 2, don't get me wrong, I don't want to sound like this is me bashing the game. I really enjoy the game, I still enjoy it. Once you start playing a game for long enough, you also do look forward to, I wonder how this could be better. This is solely what this is. It's just me rambling, thinking this is how I would improve State of Decay 2 if I was the one making it. I think State of Decay 2 it sorely needs those dynamic narrative moments between you and these random characters. Because aside from that, I think the game affords you fewer chances to actually develop a relationship and develop a connection with them. Sure, there are some characters that have little backstories where, you know, they're a stunt driver, or they want to do the action hero stuff, or they're the 20th person you've met that knew Sheriff Jackson and you want to go and find his gun and all that there kind of stuff. Or they're in a band. Everybody's in a band. And I think, you know, yes, that can slightly develop a connection with that person, but not in the same way, because those stories are coming up time and time and time again. Whereas with likes of Shadow of War, whenever a bodyguard saves your ass, or whenever one of them betrays you, it's somewhat rare. It's not happening so much that it loses its charm, but it's not happening so few that you'll never see it. And I think if the developers wanted to develop the connection that we have with our characters, I think the biggest mechanic that they could introduce is dynamic narrative moments between us and the people in our community. Folks, that is it. This has been a massive rambly video. Usually I script my videos. I'm experimenting with not scripting them recently, and it probably shows in how much I've talked. Let me know your thoughts though down in the comments below. Is this something that you would love to see come to State of Decay 2 and beyond? Or am I just barking up the completely wrong tree? Let me know down in the comments. But folks, we will be returning to the No BS Challenge next week. Do feel free to keep letting me know your suggestions, tips and tricks on how I can actually complete that. But until next time, folks, have a great week. And I will, of course, speak to you all soon.